Oh, I pressed the button and I didn't think I had gone live yet. Hey, welcome. It's Monday and time for another Monday Mastery. I hope you had a great week last week and an awesome weekend. I hope you had a lot of fun Halloween stuff. And and actually, if you hopefully maybe you'll even do a little trick or treating tonight. So anyway, it is showtime. I tell you, I got caught off guard there. I was cleaning my glasses, thinking, "Oh, I got one more button to click," and nope, it went live. So happy Halloween, Addie! Thanks for being here. And anyway, let's get going with tonight's subject. I've got a lot of oh gosh, I've got so many random thoughts today. I kind of like these kind of days where I don't lock into any particular subject and I can just go down any rabbit hole that that suits my fancy. Hey, Geneva, thanks for joining in. I just posted a question. I don't know if you all can see it, but the question I posted is, what is something that would make dating better for you? And the reason I asked this question is that I have, over the last week or so, um, I have had so many people, well, not so many, but I've had a number of people share with me how terrible and just dating is just the pits. And I'm trying to think of some of the words, uh, besides excruciating or but it was a general negative tone in how they viewed dating. And one of the things I wanted to do to post today is if you have that negative outlook on dating, what would make dating better for you? And so if you guys as you pop in here, if you see that question, just shoot me an answer. And the whole idea, and I'm really discovering that this is there's a lot of mental gymnastics that we're going through in the dating world for those of us that are single, and it has to do with so much with our beliefs about dating. Last week I touched on very briefly that there are some folks that believe that there's nobody good in their area, or that they believe a report that their particular city, and I'm referring to Kansas City in general, is a terrible place to date, and that's based on somebody who's never been to Kansas City, never dated anyone in Kansas City, and they live either on the East Coast or West Coast, and look over, look at the most of the country in the middle as cornfields and pasture land and grazing cows. So they really have no clue. I've spent the last 8 or 9 years here in Kansas, in the Kansas City metro area, and there's just a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of people to meet, a lot of great people. And um, Addie says, it's just a lot of work. For me, dating would be easier if I had more friends that had single friends. Awesome. That okay, I get it. Hey, Barbara. Thanks for joining in. I'm glad to see you're here. Barbara says, for me, it would be events where I could meet in person. Online makes it too easy for scammers. Okay. And Addie says, Kansas City isn't great, but it's better than where I came from, middle of Kansas, originally. Ick. Huh. Well, and I'll address everybody's comments here uh, in due time. Uh, but I've found that when you dig down, and I did the research on this, so and this was based on the last census information, that there were, and I'm just rounding numbers for ease of conversation here. There are roughly about 800,000 singles over age 35 in the Kansas City metro area. Now, you guys can go and dig, and if you're in different locations, and get your specific area numbers, and it's not all that difficult. The IRS, or not the IRS, the Census Bureau breaks all this down by demographics, and you can just add up who's single, who's divorced, and whatnot. But what happens is because somebody says something that could be plausible, we just automatically assume it to be true. And, I've had almost nothing but good experiences dating in the Kansas City area. It's there. I find there are plenty of people to choose from. There are, and it doesn't mean that it isn't without its difficulties. Every city is going to have its difficulties, but I think we're too easy to uh, to fall prey to somebody else's opinion without thoroughly thinking it through, or with maybe the addition of some poor experiences. Now, I've had some poor experiences dating, and I could say, oh, they are so right. There are so many broken women in this city, or they just are not ready to date. I've dated a number of women that just aren't ready to date. They've got a lot of emotional baggage, and we can use some of those experiences to our detriment. Has every date that you've been on been a bad date? No. At least I'm hoping not. If every date of yours has been bad, then maybe we need to, since you're the common denominator, look at why those dates are bad. Is it expectations? Is it uh, the people you're choosing? What are the variable factors there? Let's see. Let's get caught up on comments. Geneva says, I think what would make it easier for me would be getting a first a first shift job. Working second shift sucks to be able to plan dates. Well, that is a big factor, Geneva. So I understand that, and but sometimes the money, the overnight shift or second shift is good. So I don't know. You have to weigh those possibilities. You have to weigh those things out. But only in that case, Geneva, you're the only one that has control of that, to one extent or another. Obviously, your employer has some say in it, but uh, moving to first shift would definitely be a plus. But there are still ways of working around it, as I'm sure you've figured out by now. You may need to wait until your days off. Maybe you need to have an early morning date, or a coffee date, especially for the first couple of times. And breakfast dates. There's nothing that says you have to wait until 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock to go on your first date. So, or any date for that matter. So, I mean, there are ways of working around it. It just makes it. It just becomes a challenge to see how you can fit into each other's schedule. And Addie says, I honestly think most of those singles are choosing to stay single because dating in this generation is a bit tougher. It is tougher. I don't I don't deny that at all. Things have changed dramatically over the last 30 or 40 years. Hey Phil, thanks for joining in. Being on the same page and understanding each other. that's a big one, and it just takes time to find that, Phil. And you go through. At least I've discovered, over my 12 plus years of being single or being divorced. I've gone on a lot of one and done dates. It's a matter of knowing what you're looking for, what are your priorities, and knowing what your boundaries are. And when you know your deal breakers, when you know your must-haves, it makes it so much easier. And Addie says, my dates weren't bad, just not what I was looking for. Well, and like I just said, I've gone on a ton of one and done dates, and you know, and let me catch Geneva's comment here real quick. Yes, been working around it for sure. One right thing, the one right if I could read tonight, the right one will fit right in. Right. Oh God, see, it's been a long day already. I apologize. The right one will fit right in. I feel like absolutely, and and if it's the right, and if he's the right one, you could be working second shift, until you retire, and you guys will make it work. But back to Addie, it's the one thing that again I have to caution everybody on is that you can't expect to go on 3 or 4 or 5 dates or 6 dates, date 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different people, and expect the one to be there. This is a long term process. It is not something that just happens magically. I mean, there are some that magically fall into the right relationship, but those are so few and far between that most of us have to go on 30, 40, 50 dates before we find the right one, and maybe more. This is a numbers game, especially the older we get, the more seasoned we get. And Addie says, in 4 years, I've probably been on over 30 dates. Well, at least you're active, Addie. But then when we break that down, that's less than 10 dates a year. That's less than a date a month. So, um, how, and I'm not picking on you, Addie. I'm just, being a numbers guy, I'm looking at the numbers, and that's what, um, about 8 dates a year. And now, and I realize some of those may have turned into short-term relationships, but is that is that a sufficient number? So, and I'm asking you. Uh, oh, well, you took off dating for 2 years. Okay, there. Well, then you're getting a little over a date a month in. So okay, you got a great you got to pass on that one. But even so, Addie, that's still, you have to keep going, and if it takes 50, 60, how many is too many to date uh, before you call it quits? Hey, Glenn, thanks for joining in. Glenn says, my problem is I found 2 women I would love to be with at the same time, and can't decide which one. Both have great qualities. Well, Glenn, the best thing I can tell you is, do they both meet or do they both possess all of your must-haves? Number one. And do either one of them possess any or display any of your deal breakers or any red flags whatsoever? And it would be a matter of elimination, I guess. Which one is going to fit your lifestyle best? Which one is going to fit your are you develop are they capable of are those relationships capable of building an intellectual, a spiritual, an emotional, and a physical connection. And do they speak similar love languages? There are a lot of ways to narrow that down. Uh, and Addie, I'm going to go back to Addie here for a second. And Addie says, evidently not enough for me. And that's okay, Addie. I'm 12 years in. I've probably dated, and I've had a couple of short term and intermediate term relationships, and I've taken my share of time off, but I've also recognized that I've probably dated more than 100 different women in the last 12 years. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that it takes time, and it takes a number of dates, and I think a lot of that will depend on your must-have and deal breaker list. What things you're looking for, what characteristics you're looking for, and what things you won't tolerate. And so it's 30's a start, and I'm not and I, and I'm not picking on you, Addie. I'm just making an observation. If finding your soulmate is important to you, then it shouldn't make any difference how many you have to date to find him. It should be an ongoing quest. And Geneva says, I feel like the older I get, the pickier I get, but I have about 3 to 4 dates a month, to be honest. Awesome. Good for you. And there's nothing wrong with being picky, Geneva. Uh, the more you date, the closer you get to finding your soulmate, and the sooner you'll find your soulmate. And I'm just, hey Sheila, thanks for joining in. I'm just going to read it. Sometimes you guys can't see others' comments depending on how you signed in. So I'm just going to read Glenn's lucky. He's got 2 to choose from. And Addie says, "Me too, Geneva. It's happened though for both of us. It'll happen for both of us in time." Hey Jill, thanks for joining in. Glad you're here. And who's next? Susan. Hey Susan, thanks for joining in. From Drexel, North Carolina. Awesome. And Glenn says, "Great advice, Rick." Well, yeah, and Glenn, it really is a matter of elimination. While and Glenn, I'm gonna step back here for a second and go down a little bit deeper here, because what you're looking for is your soulmate. And what needs to happen is that you need to be able to develop a long-term relationship with this person. And what happens to everyone, literally everyone, is we have to deal with infatuation. And that's where having your must-have list, your deal breaker list, and knowing what you bring to the table, or what makes you an extraordinary mate. That's why it's so important to know all of this ahead of time and be prepared. So and you're going to, Glenn, you're a lucky guy for being in that situation to have 2 at one time. The thing that I'm going to encourage you to follow through on is making sure that infatuation is not playing a factor here. Because infatuation blinds us to the realities of whoever we're dating. New relationships are always, if infatuation and raging hormones, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're physically active or sexually active, I should say. It just means that there are hormones that are causing you to that are causing your thinking to possibly be skewed. And so the key there is to pay attention. Again, know what your must-haves are, know what your deal breakers are, and know what you bring to the table. Hey, Jacqueline, glad to see you're here. she says, "Hi Rick, don't you find so many people are trying to find happiness by wanting to be with someone else? Realistically, we have to be happy with ourselves. No one else is going to give you happiness unless you are happy with yourself. Am I wrong or am I correct?" You are absolutely 100% correct. And and that's actually how I, Jacqueline, that's actually how I started out the evening. Wasn't necessarily in those terms, but we have to be emotionally ready to date. And I don't know if one of my students is on here tonight, but Jacqueline, she said that she was so glad she went through my course, that and realized that there are so many people out there that are emotionally unready and unfit to date. They haven't taken time to recover from their past relationships. And I've dated a couple of women that haven't, over the years, have been serial monogamous. They leave one relationship and within 2 or 3 weeks they're in another relationship, or less than a month. And when you do that, you don't give yourself the time to grieve. Number one, grieve the loss of a relationship, but number two, recover from it. You don't get to sit back and take stock of what went wrong and what went right. What things would you do differently, or what did you do to contribute to the demise of the relationship? What did you do to promote the health of the relationship? We have to go through that, and we have to choose happiness to begin with. I and that gets back to a couple of the conversations I had over the weekend with people, that they're inherently unhappy. They're they look at dating as an absolute negative, and in my view, it can be a lot of, and there are times that it is drudgery. I'm not going to deny that, but for the most part, I get excited about a date. I mean, do I get tingles in my toes or butterflies in my stomach? Generally not, because I've had too many first dates. But when I go on a first date anymore, it's I'm realistic that I don't expect much to happen. And you shouldn't either. The idea is that you have to be happy with yourself. You have to be comfortable with your own company, or happy with your own company, before you can be happy with anyone else. And so it's so important to get your head in that position. And Jacqueline, you're absolutely correct. And the other aspect is, you can't you're never going to find happiness in somebody else. Uh, they're they can You have to be comfortable with the fact that you enjoy your own company. And when you get to the point that you are comfortable in that position, and decide that if you're in a relationship, great. If you're not, okay, that's okay too. You put yourself in a position of power when you're dating, because you don't have to settle. You don't put yourself in a position to settle, I should say. And that is dating from a position of strength. And when you're dating from a position of strength, you don't worry about whether somebody's going to meet your criteria. Well, hopefully you'll meet. How do I say this? Hopefully you're going to be going out on dates that have very, 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 very low potential. Hopefully you're at a point where you're going out on dates that have great potential. And you never know until you get out on that first date. Is there some chemistry? Is there something? Are you feeling a connection? And when you do, that's when the date moves from coffee and cocktails to, hey, let's do dinner. Let's keep the conversation going. Or, I had a wonderful time. I'd love to do this again. When are you up for meeting again? Maybe next time we can do dinner. And you'll get a yes or a no. And if you get a no, saying, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, but next. So, yeah, you're 100% correct, Jacqueline. And let's see, new comments. Let me try to get back here. And Geneva says, for some reason, I tend to lean toward the older guys, but these young bucks I go out to entertain their egos sometimes, just to go out. And Geneva, if and I understand, and I don't, you know, I do and I don't, because as a younger man, I there were older women that but few and far between, and I hear just tons of stories of young guys hitting on women 20 years older than them, and I was never in that camp, but it's it's always interesting to hear those stories. But in here's the thing, Geneva. It's okay to date somebody you know that you'll never be in a relationship with. Go out with the with no expectations, and find some good qualities in the guy. Or you may find a quality that you say, nope, I never want that in a relationship. And then you add something to your deal breaker list. Ultimately, hopefully you find some good qualities as you date, and you round out your must-have list, and find qualities that are just awesome. Hey Terry, thanks for joining in. Terry says, I'm too picky. I'm not going to settle for something not extraordinary. No, and I'll disagree with the first sentence there. You are not too picky. You know what you want, and I don't believe that any of us can be too picky. It just the more definition we give to our soulmate, or to our extraordinary relationship, the more difficult it is to find. I mean, if all you're looking for is two or three or four or five characteristics, or traits in your must-have list, well, then it's not going to be too difficult to find. But odds are, if you're that lax, what are your deal breakers? And because these are the boundaries that we have to set to keep ourselves focused on what's important to us. And I talk to a number of people that tend to be people pleasers, or not want to hurt anybody's feelings, and which, number one, we have no control over unless you're just downright mean. And hopefully none of you here are just downright mean. You just have your boundaries, you have your standards, and those are the things that we need to strive to find. And settling for anything less than extraordinary is settling. We don't want to do that. It's a just that thought, just it for lack of better terms, it's a waste of time. Because ultimately you're not going to be happy in a long-term relationship with anybody that doesn't meet all of your must-haves or has any of your deal breakers, because you're always dealing with something that's missing or something that you don't want. Hey Sheila, I've been on two dates with a guy, and he's asking me how I can date more than one guy at a time. I truly believe he's expecting me to hurry up and get in a relationship with him. I told him I can't rush. He said guys get feelings for women they're dating, and how can I do that? Sheila, he's and I understand what you're saying. And he's expecting you to date by his rules, and unfortunately for him, you're not going to do that. And and he's expecting you after two dates to be exclusive with him, and that's just not realistic. He's not living in a realistic world. He's wanting you to live in in a dating world that makes him comfortable. If he's not comfortable dating more than one woman at a time, and and getting taking his time to get to know someone, then it's his problem. It's not your problem. If that is a problem for him, then he needs to move on, quite seriously. And you know, while I personally find it difficult to date more than one person at a time, I've the woman that co-authored my book, Dating Backward, she had 5 dates in 1 week with 5 different guys. And I can't keep that straight. If maybe 2 dates in a week for me, with 2 dates with 2 different people is about my max. And even then, it's still difficult for me to keep it all straight when when I'm online dating, or dating online. I having more than 3 or 4 conversations going at one time, it gets confusing for me. I'm simple when it comes that way. My brain doesn't doesn't keep all that information straight. I need a client management system, or a dating management system, where I can keep notes on everybody and review my notes before I call or before I go out. But to finish up, Sheila, don't worry about what he wants. Number one, you know, focus on what you want. And if you're dating a couple, excuse me, if you're dating a couple of different guys at the same time, okay. If he's not comfortable with that, okay, next. And it's just, and I'd be straight with him. And I'd say, listen, I'm looking for my soulmate, and if that takes me dating 2 or 3 guys at the same time, I'm not making a commitment to anybody. And if you're not comfortable with that, then I wish you all the best. But you and he may be coming at it from the standpoint that he doesn't want any competition, and he's intimidated by competition. So that may be another consideration there. But that's his problem again. That's not your problem. And Jill, let's see what Jill has to say. Jill, wouldn't be rushed for any reason. You can date more than one at a time, especially if you're not getting emotionally entangled until you figure out who you are, or who you like. Exactly. And and you probably said it a lot better than I did, Jill. Maybe you should be on this side of the mic. And Terry says, I hear so many going on that first meetup, thinking this is going to be the one. Oh yes, and honestly, I've been there, I've done it, only to be disappointed. I go into a meetup with no expectations, but to have fun and possibly make a new friend, and that's the way it should be done. Terry, you're absolutely right. Uh, it's if and there are certain people that we meet, or that we connect with, and we build them up to something more than they are. And I've been guilty of that. It's one of those things that we all tend to do from time, and hopefully only from time to time. But and I'll go back to a story. This was several years ago. I was reading an online profile, and it was just like, oh my God, this woman is perfect. Everything she says, it's just everything clicks. And I introduced myself and wrote a nice introductory note to her. Didn't hear a thing. She was probably overwhelmed with suitors or people who wanted to meet her, and she may not have even seen uh, my message to her, or she may not have been a paying member, so she wouldn't have seen my note to her to begin with. So we just don't know what's going on in the background, and unfortunately we have to you have to assume that guys, this is for you primarily, that women are being overwhelmed by uh, a lot of attention, a lot of messages, especially early on, when they're first on a new dating site. They 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 become, ladies, please don't take this the wrong way, they become fresh meat. I was called fresh meat shortly after my divorce. I met a couple of women out one night, and we were talking about being divorced and how long, and I was less than a year out, and they were all 4 or 5 years out, and says, "Oh, fresh meat." And so, it's we all understand what that's all about. But you're right, Terry. Just go out with no expectations, or very low expectations, and the reality is that there are going to be certain people that we just, in our heads, we click, we build them into something that they're not, or we imagine that they are someone that they aren't, and it's heartbreaking, or can be. And Susan says, "Thank you, Rick. I don't know what I would have done without your book and your sound advice." Ah, thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. And Addie says, "I wish I could find me a young buck that would meet my must-haves. I'm going to need a caretaker in possibly 20 to 25 years." Yeah, well, I'm a lot closer. Come on, Addie. I roughly know your age. You better think about that in the terms of 40 and 45 years. And Addie also says, spreadsheets help with dating multiple people at once. Absolutely. Sheila says, "Next." Thank you, Rick. Love you. Love you too, Sheila. I appreciate I appreciate you more than you know. Hey, Lonnie, thanks for joining in from Nashville. So anyway, that got us caught up on comments here. So it's we have to dating is one of those things we need to take it, number one, seriously, but we also have to take it like lightheartedly. When you take it too seriously, I had one woman over the weekend comment that dating was terrible, and that she was tired of guys that posted pictures of of fish and dead animals. Um, what else did she complain about? There was a couple of she had a list of things that she didn't like, and and thought, well, that people, guys should know better. Well, that's your opinion. Number one, if he's holding up the catch of the day, number one, I'm going to tell you, you would be surprised at how many women do the same thing. It may not be their profile picture, but you start scrolling through pictures, they're holding up the catch of the day. They're holding up the head of the buck that they just shot, or the turkey that they just shot. And it's just because we don't enjoy or participate in the sports that or activities that other people do, doesn't mean that they shouldn't share those activities. At one point I was thinking, yeah, guys, come on. But if that's really what you enjoy, then by all means. Because one of the things that I teach is that we need to share pictures of the things that pictures of us doing the things that we enjoy. For me, it would be out sailing, sharing a picture of me on the boat or working on the boat, which I do more of than I do sailing, or snow skiing, or bicycling, or those are the things that I enjoy. If you don't enjoy them, that's okay. You don't have to be negative about it. Just realize that we're not a good fit, or potentially we're not a good fit. It's just we have to recognize that other people have their things that they enjoy, and we have the things that we enjoy. And our mission should be to find somebody that enjoys similar things that we do. If you're seeing pictures of if you're offended by pictures of fish or dead animals, hunting, whatever it is, then pass them by, but don't complain. It's they're doing the things that they enjoy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if you're trying to, well, let me rephrase that. What I found is that quite a few people think that we should all think the same way. And I had a friend that was so disappointed with people in general because they didn't think through things the same way she did. And and it doesn't make her right and everybody else wrong. It just means that we're not the same. We don't look at things the same way. We don't think through things the same way. I dated a woman years ago that she said, "No, you need to solve this problem by doing this, 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 and this." And I would say, "Okay, I'll think about it." And then I'd ultimately come to the same conclusion. It's just I took a different path, and she was just perplexed at how I couldn't think of it in the same terms that she did. And that kind of taught me that we all look at things differently. And when we try to when we assume that everybody's going to think like us, that's when we get in trouble. Not everybody thinks the way we do. Not everybody's going to be honest. And ladies, you see this more than guys do, but I've seen it on dating sites where, guys more so than women, but women do it too. They'll post pictures from 10, 15 years ago, or they'll post the glamour shots. Ladies, you remember the glamour shots? It's you know we've got to be honest with who we are. If you're searching for a date online, you have to take responsibility in what you're looking at and who you're talking to. That's your responsibility. It's not match.com or Bumble. It's not their responsibility. Their responsibility is to get people online. That's their whole premise. That's how they make money. And for you, it should be to find out who matches you best. If you don't like the matches that you're seeing, then change sites. Odds are you're going to see some of the same people on a different site. That's why there's over 1,500, if I'm not mistaken, it may be more than that, 1,500 online dating sites in this country alone. And to me, it seems to me there's more like 15,000 worldwide. So it's our responsibility to look at online dating, and if you're looking at online dating, that we take the responsibility for making the decisions on the people we talk to. If we're not happy with the people we're seeing online, then you either need to change your parameters or you need to move to a different site. It's kind of simple. Let's see if I can get caught up. And Addie says, I feel if I take it too seriously, then it comes off reeking of desperation. Um, yes and no. And Addie says, I was chatting with uh, with a match this week for maybe less than 5 minutes. He asked if he could ask me a personal question. I said yes, as long as it's not a sexual type question. It didn't end up. I didn't end up hearing from him again. Haha. Well, cut that guy loose real quick. Well, and Addie, that's what I was just referring to, is taking responsibility for the people we're talking to. And you set the guidelines, you set the standards, and boom, he was gone. You weeded him out quickly, and that's okay. And that, I mean, I you should be proud of yourself for saying, as long as it's not a sexual type question. And and any guy that's going to start dropping sex questions or sexual questions in the first 5 minutes of a conversation, first 10 minutes, he's not worth his weight anyway. So, guys, anybody that especially those of you that will be watching this later on, if that's what you're doing, stop doing it. You're being a pig, and you're not thinking with your brain. And quite honestly, guys, you need to constantly work on your brain. There, it's a you should be continually learning. Life is and this is down another rabbit hole. Life should be a non-stop effort to learn. Whether it should be learning about yourself, learning about other people, learning about things that interest you. There's any number of things that you can learn about. Learn a new craft, learn a new hobby, learn about history, become conversational in more than just sports or more than just politics, and be become you become more attractive to potential suitors. There's I've been told countless times that smart, well, and I'll use from a woman's perspective, that smart men are sexy. And I think the same thing. Smart women are sexy. It's a it's just something that attracts me. And guys, knowledge, intelligence, and I say intelligence more than knowledge. We can be we can have all the book learning in the world and be dumber than a box of rocks. Yeah, but that's my opinion. And let's see, Addie popped in and said, last week there was an older man that, after 2 days chatting, he asked me what I was wearing. I responded, uh, uh, not you too. I blocked him quickly. I'm getting pretty good at setting boundaries setting boundaries. I'm just over all that. Absolutely. And that's, and for the rest of you, Addie's doing what we all need to do. That she's got her boundaries, and if the conversation starts veering down sexual a sexual road, boom, she's done. That's it. And and she's taking control of her dating life. She's not sitting there, and she may, and Addie, I'm sure you may gripe about it from time to time with some of your girlfriends. Oh, this guy just, but overall, she's proactive on taking care of the situation. She's not, and as you've noticed her comments tonight, none of them have been negative. It's just like, this is what's happening, and this is what I've done. Next. And that's the way we should be looking at it. We shouldn't be sitting here grousing about how terrible these sites are and what's going on, and not finding not finding any quality guys, or not finding any quality women online, or anywhere for that matter. We make it so much harder than it needs to be. And when you walk in, and I've talked about this many, 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 many times, is the reticular activating system in our brain. When you're focusing on negative, guess what you find? You find all the negative crap out there that you don't want. And that's when you start thinking, well, there's no good guys left. There's no good women available. They're all broken. They're all looking for a nurse or a purse, or they want to empty my retirement account, or whatever it is. Stop doing that. Start looking at the positive side of dating. You get to meet somebody new. Are they going to be your soulmate? Yeah, probably not, but you get to meet somebody new. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. This is not something that just magically happens. It's something that takes time and it takes work to find. And I saw a comment the other day on or was it today, about somebody that was frustrated with dating, and was making comment about how she wanted to quit dating and just wait on God, and but then she wasn't sure, did she need to continue dating and try to do her part in finding her soulmate, because you know there's somebody out there looking for you. It's just that simple. We all look at it from our perspective. We're looking for our soulmate. Well, our soulmate is looking for us, and we have to be in a position to to be there and allow that to happen. Because if we're sitting at home on the couch grousing or complaining about the fact that I can't get a date, that there's nobody out there, there's no quality people left, or it's a terrible city to date in, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Quite honestly, because you need to take an active response and an active role in your dating and relationship life. It's not something that's just going to magically appear. Nobody's got a magic wand. God's not going to sit here and say, poof, plop somebody down on the couch next to you magically one day. Unless you're expecting it to be the mailman or the UPS guy or maybe FedEx or the Amazon guy. I don't know. So it's something that we need to take control of. We need to take responsibility. And Addie says, I'm not even making it to the meeting and going on a date stage. Really, I'm okay with it. I'm still loving my single life in the meantime. Absolutely. And that's the way it should be. But you're still, Addie, you're still an active participant, and that's the important part. You're still looking, you're still in the search. Even if you don't make it to the date stage, you're still weeding through the plethora of guys that are reaching out to you, or that you've reached out to, and you're still active. It's not like you said, nope, I'm shutting it all down, I'm done. You still go out. You've been to meetups, and you go out and do those things, and that's important. And again, you have online dating is not the only way. You have to go out and be social. You have to be active. You have to you have to go to you don't have to go to church, but you should be talking to people in church. You should be going to social events, charity events, whatever, sporting events, taking classes, sailing classes, cooking classes, shooting classes, golfing classes, or lessons, and you just experience a variety of different things. Step out of your comfort zone, do something different. But it's all a matter of being out there, being social, and doing things that you enjoy, or learning something, exploring something that, well, I've heard this could be fun, so let's go try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And Terry says, good for you, Addie. And Terry says, I'm not going to stop living waiting for a match. Absolutely. You got to keep going. And as we all need to. And with that, Terry, you've got the last word tonight. And I thank everybody for being here. Let's just wrap it up. We're about 5 minutes from the top of the hour. And if you guys have any questions, shoot them to me via Messenger, and I'll do my best to answer them. In the meantime, have a great and blessed week. I hope you all have a couple of nice days of weather. I know we've got 3 or 4 days, nice days of weather here in the Kansas City area before it starts turning colder, which I'm not looking forward to, but that's part of November. Addie, you're very welcome. You have a great week, too. I'll see you all next Monday for Monday Mastery at 6 p.m. Central Time. And I don't know when the time changes. It'll be one of these times. I get all screwed up with the time changes, and it just messes with my body clock. I don't know why we still do that, but I digress. Have a great week, everyone. I love you guys. Thank you for all the great comments. Thank you, everyone, for showing up, and I'll see you next week on Monday Mastery.